friends, the next couple assignments in color require you to have a few techniques under your belt, and so this is a small tutorial video to help you be most successful with those. So to start, we know by now that color depends on light. In order to see color, there needs to be some sort of light source that reflects that color into our eyeballs. When learning color in an educational setting, you can do it one of two ways. You can do it with paint or with colored papers. With paint, you're actually physically mixing that color and being able to do that for yourself, which is a really, really good skill. So this tutorial is going to help us understand how to make a swatch and how to do that most successfully. So here I have a palette paper, which will hold my paint, and it's just a waxy surface, kind of like wax paper. I have my paint, I have my masking tape, the most important thing to be successful for this. I also have brought some canvas paper here. I'm going to show you how that does not work for this particular exercise, but I also have a canvas, and what you're required to get for your supplies is called canvas pad, and it's basically just loose leaves of this canvas right here. Arguably the most important tool for this exercise is the palette knife. I have this one that has a little bit of a funky shape. I'm going to show you how to effectively use a palette knife and how to tape off a square. The reason we want to create a swatch with the palette knife is that evenness is really key when viewing a color in its form, because we know about light and how light affects color. We want whatever we put onto the canvas to be as even as possible, which is why when using a brush, we get kind of an uneven texture and the color looks different in different spaces and different lights. We don't want that to happen here because this is more of a technical exercise. So I'm going to start off by taping my square. And the thing to remember about this is in which order you first lay down your tape. So as I tape it down, I am making sure that my tape is on the outside of my my penciled edge, because I want to cover that up when I do my swatch. I'm also trying to make sure that it's as even as possible. I like to do my tape across from one another so that when I'm taking off the tape, I remember which one to take off first. Also, doing it opposite like this helps for your corners to stay really nice and crisp. Okay, now with the palette knife, there are a couple of different ways that we can use it. One of which I see a lot of students doing that is not the way to use it. And then I'll show you the way to actually use it effectively and how it's meant to be used. So I see a lot of students mixing paint like this with the tip. That is not the way the palette knife should be used. The palette knife has this really nice flat surface, and that is meant to be utilized. When you're mixing your paint, you want to really smash that paint with the flat side. Okay? So you did your squares, your primary squares exercise. I'm just going to do a really quick demo of that and what it looks like to take that off, and how each color that you do should be viewed. So when I am kind of like pulling this swatch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my, let's see if I can do this here, my palette knife at just a little bit of an angle. And I'm not trying to really push into the canvas. I'm trying to allow that paint to slide. Now, I have quite a bit on the back there, as you can see. And I'm using that to my advantage. I am going to have some run over, but the tape's going to save my canvas from getting dirtied. Okay, so I'm going to do it just at an angle. I have quite a bit of paint. I'm not going to push. I'm just going to let it kind of float along while at the same time guiding it. Okay, so as you can see, I have a little bit of a bubble in there. So what I'm going to do is take some more. And run it through one more time, a couple more times, just to make sure that I don't have any sort of bubbles. It's as flat as possible, as even as possible. You can see that there, okay? And now I'm gonna take the tape off while the paint is still wet. Sometimes the paint can get stuck onto the tape when it dries, and then pull at your corners and your edges and make that not so wonderful. So I want to take the tape off in the opposite order of what I put it down. So things that I put on last, I want to take off first. The reason for that is your corners. You keep your corners really crisp when you take it off in the opposite order. Oops, that is stuck. So let's do this side. Ooh, so satisfying. All right, so I did this other square earlier that's dry. What I wanted to show you, I don't know if you can see in the video, but acrylic always dries about 20% darker. So here I have my swatch that is wet and it's a little light. It's also raised up a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. That will flatten just a tiny bit after it has dried, but I want to make sure that I get enough on there that it doesn't flatten enough so that I can see the canvas underneath, because what we're looking for is a really even, pure swatch. All right, so your next assignment is most likely the color wheel. As you can see, I have a little bit of a pie shape there. Your tints and your shades are going to go on the outer sides of those. And I'm going to show you an easy way so that you don't have to tape off the circle, as well as once again showing you the taping method just a little bit more close. Obviously probably don't have to use that much tape, but I got excited. All right, so I'm gonna do this small area right inside there. My little, let's say it's my tint area, either my tint or my shade. What I'm gonna do for the tape is just go right straight across, connecting this line and this line. So the bottom corners of each and then the top corners of each, so that instead I'm creating a straight line and it looks a little bit less like a pizza and more like a triangle. So we're going for triangle here. So there's the top. Here is the bottom. I like to run my finger across the tape too, just to make sure that it is as connected to the canvas as possible. Let me get a little more paint here. Somebody's having a dance party outside. That's fun. Again, smashing my paint to mix it. So we can't see that. Smashing my paint to mix it. I'm going to get a little bit of a glob on there. Pretty good glob. And then as I pull my swatch, I'm going to make sure to give myself a little bit of an angle and let it kind of glide. I don't want to scratch the canvas in any way, shape, or form. I'm really trying to get a relatively thick, maybe the thickness of the tape or a little more, swatch on my color wheel here. Right. So it looks like I have some ridges in my paint, which probably means that there is some dried paint on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and just get a little bit more of just a new paint here. I don't want to worry it too much. Just a few swipes will do. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull it off in the reverse order if I put it on. So leaving my sides till last. This is the most satisfying part. Trick here is to not get your fingers into your swatch because that is really frustrating. Ta-da! So one of the reasons why we don't want to use the canvas paper is that, well, number one, it is paper and it doesn't work with paint as well, even though it's intended to. But I did a swatch here on the paper, and if you look really closely, it's bleeding. The paint is bleeding out through the edges. That's not how we want our swatches to end up. The other thing that can happen is if you have a stronger masking tape, it can rip the paper, which I have seen happen to students, and it's very sad. So my very last tip has to do with drying times. A lot of this you'll be working on simultaneously, and because the swatches are so thick, they need a little bit of time to dry in between when you're taping and working on them. One of your best friends besides masking tape this quarter is going to be the hairdryer. Now, I have seen students burn paint before. So with the hairdryer, you want to make sure you have it on the cool setting, you're not too close to it, and that you're not doing it for an extended amount of time. Typically what I have my students do is work on opposites. So if you're working on this tint over here, maybe work on the opposite side for a shade or a tint, and so on and so forth. So you're working across and giving those things some time to dry. But the hairdryer definitely does help. Good luck this quarter.